Welcome back. Before the break, we talked about the looming fiscal cliff and how we might hope to avoid going over it. Well, the cliff, it has dominated political coverage, as you know, for the better part of the last couple of weeks, so much so that another story went completely under the radar. Just yesterday, Senate Republicans, they blocked a treaty to protect people with disabilities from discrimination, despite an impassioned plea from former Senate Majority Leader Republican Bob Dole, a man who was severely wounded fighting for this country in World War II. The UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, it actually fell short of the 66 votes required to be ratified. Why, you ask? Well, because conservatives opposed it, saying it somehow threatened U.S. sovereignty. After the vote, Senator John Kerry said in a statement, "This is one of the saddest days I've seen in almost 28 years in the Senate, and it needs to be a wake-up call about a broken institution that is letting down the American people." Well, joining us to sound off on the fiscal cliff and much more is New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who joins us from our nation's capital.
Hi, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. More importantly, how are we doing as it relates to the fiscal cliff? We read the tea leaves here, and it seems like Republicans might be willing to extend the tax cuts for the bottom 98%, but they want to leave off the table any rate hikes for the top 2%, let alone any of the spending cuts or the reforms till after the new year. Is that a deal you think Democrats could live with, a short-term fix for the middle class here and beyond, and deal with the heavy lifting here in January, February?
We'll see. I think it's important that both sides come together with the president to come up with a reasonable solution that's balanced. My priority is to make sure the middle class tax rates are lower, that we have to guarantee that lower rate for the middle class. So maybe we could do just that piece first and then do the rest later. But it is important to reach common ground because there's a lot at stake right now. We have to right our fiscal ship, and there's a way to do that in a balanced and reasonable way, and that's what I'm urging my colleagues to focus on.
You know, maybe I misread it, Senator, but I thought a week ago that the sides at least seem to have some common ground here. Forget about whether it's on principle politically. There was enough for both sides to agree on that we'd have a deal. I'm not so sure now. When I see what happened yesterday over, of all things, the Disabled Act, we couldn't even reach a deal on that. It left, I think, not just me, but most of the public saying, my gosh, what's going on in Washington?
Yeah, the disability treaty yesterday was really important. We received 61 votes, but we needed 2/3 of all senators present, so we would have needed 5 more votes to pass that. And what that bill would have allowed is us to work with other countries to protect the disabled in their country in the way we protect them in our country, the way we fight for their rights and their abilities to go to restaurants, to go to schools, to rent apartments, and to have access to basic necessities of life. And it's a real unfortunate fact that, unfortunately, too many of the Republican Party have become so conservative that something as common sense and something as shared a value as that could not be agreed upon. We had many Republicans on the bill, we just didn't have enough.
But, you know, Lindsey Graham is a friend to this show, and I consider him a serious legislator. He's one of the ones who wouldn't agree. Can you explain to the public about something seemingly as bipartisan as looking out for the disabled, how that becomes a partisan issue in today's D.C.?
I don't know why Lindsey voted the way he did, but I think it would be great for your viewers to have him on to try to explain because it makes no sense. It makes no sense to me. Well,
we're trying. And on the more here and now, we assumed, maybe wrongfully, that in New York and the greater part of our region, Senator, that post-Sandy, the funds would be made available, pretty much no questions asked. But am I right to read a little bit in that we're not so sure all those monies will be made available here and that not everybody is on the same page as to the immediacy and the scope of the damage in our region?
Well, we don't know yet. The White House has not issued its number yet. There was obviously a report by the New York Times of some lower number. That number, from my perspective, is inadequate. It's not going to begin to address the need. I mean, as everyone who is watching your program knows, the size and the scope of this damage to our state and to the region is incredible. So many lives were lost. homes are absolutely destroyed. Businesses are left in rubble. There's so much work that we need to do to rebuild. Our transportation infrastructure was very badly damaged. Almost any of the natural protections we had along the shorelines have been destroyed. They need to be built back up. We have real work to do, and so I'm going to be advocating for as much money as we can get. I think the governor offered a quite modest proposal when he put forward our numbers for the state. They were on the conservative side. They were not overly aggressive. And those numbers were based on what we know today. There's going to be even more damage, more claims being made over the weeks and months to come. And so we're just going to argue for the largest number we can get. We'd like to reach the number our governor has asked for. If that's not possible, then we will go back a second, third, fourth time if necessary. But we are going to fight for New York and make sure New York gets the money it needs to rebuild.
Senator, I really appreciate a few minutes.
Thank you. Take care.
You know, guys, I think we all just accepted after seeing that the money was going to come. Here's the amount Washington writes the check to New York, New Jersey certainly as well, and other eastern seaboard states that got banged by the storm. But I think we forget the fight that happened after 2001 to get the money, after 9/11. And it took 10 years for Zadroga to the funding to come here too. And I saw a threatening press conference by your old boss saying yesterday, listen, you know, a cyclone comes through your Midwestern state here, don't come looking to us. Do they really think down deep they're not going to get 90 cents in the dollar of what they need?
The numbers are outliers. I think Senator Menendez said, you know, the number that's being tossed around are the totality of all recovery and all infrastructure and all improvements. We're going to get a lot of what we need. We're not going to get all of it, and some of it is going to be drawn out. There's no doubt about it.
People are still waiting for FEMA money from Irene, so this is a compounded problem.
Never underestimate how much people in the rest of the country hate New York. They really do in a lot of ways.
Hate's a strong word. I think they have misgivings about the Mid-Atlantic states. Let's be more politic than that.
Wow, that's
very political.
That's awfully scripted.
When we come back, something that doesn't have political overtones, and that is what our troops have dealt with and are dealing with in certain corners of the world. When we come back, we'll bring in ABC's Jake Tapper. He's going to tell us about his new book on a remote American outpost in northeastern Afghanistan. It's a story about not just war told through the prism of an outpost in some of the most part of the country, but also soldiers showing unbelievable valor. Stay with us.